Hi everyone, I'm super excited to host Nico Suvorov, VP of Sales of Versatile. Thanks a lot for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. Excited to have this conversation.
Nico, take us back to your from college days till this date. What has been your career journey and highlights?
So my career journey from college to today have been heavily influenced by Hilti. I worked at various leadership positions in Europe and US. Highlights are mostly around working with various groups on strategy. I was always involved in sales and strategy and kind of go to market. And first big, I think, milestone or important event that took place right around 2008. And at Hilti, we had this idea of becoming more than a tool company. The idea was we want to be a tool, hardware, software, and services company. And we were looking at the strategy, and part of the work that I was involved in is really understanding what are those 20% of the customers that give an enterprise 80% of their profit. What makes them unique? How can we get more of them? How do we engage with them? How do we make their life easier and better with our product services? And that was really good. It was over a year-long journey with really, really good peers that I learned a lot from. And I walked away with understanding of foundations of what it takes to be successful for any company in a construction space, what needs to happen on the product side, what needs to happen on the strategy side, what needs to happen on the execution side. It was a really good exercise that the outcome shaped me for, let's say, the rest of my career. I'm applying these principles um, in my role today. Obviously, I learned a lot more through other experiences, but that's the foundation. I then moved into construction tech in 2016-17. Construction tech ever since. I'm really excited to be in Versatile. I think we have really good product. I think we have really good technology that is ready to be in the market. And I think we're carving out a really important and a big niche for ourselves here.
Anything else looking of your founder CEO journey at Cycling and Spectre? What would be the lessons learned in running those companies and building those?
Different journeys, different stages of companies. Obviously, Hilti is a privately owned, really established company with 70 plus years on the market. Any startup, early stage startup, is mostly about placing good bets and taking your ideas as quickly as possible to the market. And yeah, that success is measured differently because in early stages, what's more important is the funding until you get to Series A, and then after that, it's really the revenue again. And I really like the revenue part, so fundraising is not as fun for me as it is growing the revenue. But lessons learned: you gotta be scrappy. You gotta be able to take your ideas with 20-30% clarity and confidence and push them through as quickly as possible, get yay or nay and move forward. And I think what's also important is very similar to sales. You have to really have thick skin because like 95% plus of the time you just hear no. I'm sure you've experienced the same in your journey.
Time.
And by the way, that no doesn't mean that you're a bad person or you have a bad idea. It's just like that's not the right, could be not the right timing, could be not the right person. Problem is not painful enough, and so on and so forth.
What is the art of cracking enterprise deals in AEC?
Good question. I'll go back to the foundations. One of the things that I really am pushing our team is relevance. And by team, I mean not just sales, but also product and operations and everything else. You have to be relevant. If you're not relevant, there is no way you can get a logo. Getting a logo on a slide deck is different than expanding with an account, right? Like really having an enterprise account deal where you're on every project, and like that's a different topic, right? And in order for you to be really an enterprise, to have a really enterprise customer, you have to have relevance. Relevance, in my opinion, comes from frequency of use. Like you need to be the tool that people open up daily. At Versatile, that is our daily reporting. Like I hear stories that give me goosebumps when I hear a safety manager, or we have very big steel erector fabricator and general superintendent, iron worker, I don't know, like he's huge. He's 7 feet tall, probably like 300 pounds, all muscle, probably 5% body fat. He is huge guy. And he's telling us like, yeah, every morning I wake up, the first thing I open is Versatile on my phone. And as I'm doing my daily morning routine, you can imagine what it is. I'm scrolling through my reporting. This is what I'm talking about, relevance. You got to be relevant. People need to open up and say, I got to see that. By the way, I talked to a big GC that is a leader in specific segments, and we showed them the product, and those are good friends. And their VDC manager said, Nico, look, I don't wake up thinking, where is my structural steel daily reporting? So same product, different customer segment. For one, we are the morning ritual. For another one, we're irrelevant. So that's kind of where it starts, knowing where you're going to be relevant. By the way, relevant doesn't mean that you have to have a product that one size fits all. I made a post on April's Fool Day saying like, okay, we're going to do this and that and the other. One product, why solve one problem where you can solve all of them? And like one product solves all of the problems in the construction space and so on and so forth. It just doesn't work like that. So you have to have a clear strategy on segmentation where you say, okay, we are relevant. We're most relevant in this segment. This is kind of where we are also. Like we have 5 different segments, and for each segment, we have a different value proposition. And for the first thing I'm looking for is relevance. You need to be relevant. Once you're relevant, now you need to start saying, okay, if I have these folks here every day doing probably not very difficult, executing not very difficult tasks, what can I do to have them every once in a while to do something that is of high value? Once in a while, maybe once a month, maybe twice a project or 3 times a project. And it could manifest itself in fighting off a claim, or providing this clarity to another stakeholder like a steel fabricator or a GC who are not necessarily our customers, right? So like, let's say a steel erector brings us on a project, they love the daily reporting, and then like they need to resolve an issue where something is missing and they need to find out when it arrived or it didn't arrive. So like these things are important, and that still does not drive the enterprise, because that now you're relevant and you're valuable, and now you need to have something where once or twice per project. And by the way, construction, in my opinion, is all about projects. The money is coming from projects. P&L of any construction company, unless you're selling IT kind of Microsoft stuff where it's really relevant to everybody, like you have to bring value on the project level. So on the project level, there is closeout or like retainer that they need to get. So you need to be able to bring superior value when it comes to that project once or twice to a project to somebody who is your executive buyer, right? And it could be getting that retainer or help with a change order or something big, right? Like we have stories of steel erector going into $3 million scope and then have an $8 million change order. At some point, the tracking of the scope is less relevant than making sure that they get paid for the $8 million change order. So, those 3 things need to happen. And those 3 things need to happen project after project after project. My personal kind of like where we track is it takes 4 projects for people to say, oh, wow, this is not in construction, what I find is there are always going to be good projects. And by the way, customers know that. They'll be like, okay, it doesn't matter. You could bring all of the technology or none of the technology. That was going to be a great project to begin with. So like, that's it. Like this, like there's no reason to attribute something to a good project. Same thing with bad projects. It doesn't matter what you do. The project is a bad project. We knew from the beginning it would not work out. So like, it has nothing to do with your technology, right? But once you get on to 4 projects, and after 4 projects, you kind of build this rapport, and now you have a story of people logging in and looking at your frequency driver, your daily reporting in our case. Then they solve 1 or 2 bigger issues on the project, and then they solve 1 big issue on each project. Everybody got exposure. The reason you need to solve big issue, because big issue typically gets before like big claim or change order submitted, typically folks hire an organization, get a glance at it. So you expose your data, in our case, to like executives, like real high level folks, like VP of operations or senior VP or COO, where they need to sign off on, like, I don't know, multi-million dollar change order, where they don't sign off on like $15,000. That's just like a PM level. So once you have all those three things, now you can start talking about enterprise, and because now the value is there and the value is evident. Scale into enterprise is a program. So now you need to go and convince that you are not going to be a burden to organization, because you're most likely competing with at least three big initiatives that are internal. It could be HR related, payroll related, compliance related, or like we have a lot of fabricators, steel erectors, fabricators right now. Steel industry is going through a boom. So now you're competing with, let's say, machines, equipment for the fab shop. So if you think you're going to compete with that, good luck. You need to you need to come in with a program where you basically say, hey, we will take on the effort of rolling it out within your organization. All we need is this executive buy-in and basically a blessing. Go ahead to get this going. And yeah, 6 to 8 months later, I think you will have it. It's a journey. At least in my experience with different organizations, I don't remember having anything that was quicker than 6 to 8 months. And by the way, we're talking about short-term projects. So if you're talking like a project for any subcontractor is months. A project for general contractor is years. So like if you're thinking of general contractor for projects is 8 years. Right. If you're thinking curtain wall contractor for projects is, they're typically 70 to 80 days. Okay, that's 320 working days, a little bit over a year, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. This is such a like interesting data point, and the way you describe it, like it's complex, tests one's patience, and it's a bit bureaucratic. I was wondering what are the, like, there is a penetration layer into this an enterprise, and there is like retention, upsell, and I often hear that you enter into this big companies with a pilot, test it out, get more projects within a studio, and then go for like whole org wide strategy, because like different regional studios or uh, operates differently. So it's also, you have to sometimes repeat the same process. So what are like ways to get foot into the door into multiple enterprise?
You mean like foot in the door, like to start, right? To get that first pilot? Yeah.
Correct.
Um, it's really, I don't remember who said it, but it may be Dustin from Edify. On one podcast I heard, he said, if you cannot sell your product to a local construction company, go back to the drawing board and see if you can, like you need to still get it to a point where you can sell as a founder. You need to be able to sell a product to somebody local, right? And so like that is the first thing. But once you hear positive feedback from few on your POC or MVP, then it's really like you need to be really excited about the product, and you need to be relentless telling your story, and you need to be really thick skinned, because 90% of the time people will tell you no, or they will keep on hiding their no in objections that may take you on the wrong path. So yeah, at some point it's just numbers games. And with Versatile, Merav, who started in 2017, was just relentless, talking to every single person at every single conference and meetup. And, she has a great story of coming in with the suitcase in New York City with a broken wheel on the suitcase, and still like spending weeks and weeks and weeks going after office, pitching the idea of what now is Versatile, right? You just need to go there. You need to talk to people. Construction industry is very personal. You need to be able to build relationships. You need to be able to build trust. And then you need to be able to support them in what they're doing. Again, everybody has different objectives at different times, right? So if you're coming in with somebody who's resolving an issue on site that has nothing to do with your product, they're not going to give you time of day no matter how nice they are, right? People don't have time. So you need to come in and you just need to, it's a numbers game in the sense that you need to be able to be there at the right time with the right solution for a problem that they're having.
Any mistakes from your experience that one should avoid? I've also seen sometimes when you get very aggressive in that account based outreach, you might ruin your chance to even get the first meeting.
I think the biggest thing is understanding the customers, right? You don't need to be a construction expert in everything, but you need to be construction expert in the problem you're trying to solve. Construction professionals will give you the time and day to talk about the problem they're trying to solve because they're genuinely trying to solve it. So a mistake would be not knowing the problem you're trying to solve for construction. That would be, yeah, that would be something that I think is, it's just not going to be relevant again. Like people are not going to give you the time. And then if you keep on talking about something else, or you're using wrong terminology, or you're trying to push on the idea that this is really a problem without understanding what the problem actually is, that will turn people off. So, but again, it has something to do with EQ and kind of reading the person on the other side of the conversation.
What would be your recommended framework on building the sales org? Like, till what revenue should be like founder led sales? What would be the first hire? I'm thinking, okay, ARR 1 million, 10 million, like at different stages. What should be the sales pods?
Man, that's so yeah. I think it's helpful for a founder to be a founder led sales as long as you can for two reasons. Number one is sales grounds you really, really well. So like, yeah, doesn't matter how much money you raise, what is your background, doesn't matter where you came from. That superintendent on the project, you may be the best AI engineer at OpenAI. That superintendent on the project doesn't even know what OpenAI is. Like, they don't care. $100 million fundraise, they don't care. Like, if it does not solve the problem, they'll tell you where to go and they will be very clear about the direction. Okay. So I think that is important because that keeps the founder grounded. And I am a firm believer that the culture starts at the top. So if the founder is grounded, everybody else is going to be grounded, right? So like it keeps you honest to where you are as a company, as a product, and as an industry, right? Number two reason to stay as long is your brand, like even versatile. Like the company has been around for a long time. The number of times I hear about Mayrav conversations is just 80% of the chance that somebody has spoken to our founder earlier, right? So there is a and look at other startups, look at Open Space, look at Dusty. Like the founder has a strong brand, and no matter, the company is a company, but the founder have they have a lot of weight when it comes to brand and trust and the promise to the industry, because those were the people who back, like in our case, Mirav back in 2017, 19, she was the person who had the mission to do it. She still is. But back then, like, she was the person, right? And so, yeah, those are the two big reasons to stay as long as you can. There is going to be a moment of time, that inflection point, where you need to start building systems, because founders' sales are very different than sales that we spoke about on the enterprise sales, right? And it's not that the founders typically can do enterprise sales, but they're mostly doing it kind of natural. They typically are good people, good storytellers, competent folks who can explain the problem and the solution, but often they're lacking the systems. So when you see that the hurdle of your growth becomes the systems, that's when you need to start to invest in the systems. And typically you want to bring somebody who understands the systems and can build the systems based on the success of the founder. Sales stage. And I think for every company, it's going to be different. I don't know that there is a universal rule. I may be completely off, but like for, it's going to be different for hardware companies than the hardware enabled companies and pure SaaS, right? Because your average contract value is different, right? And your buying cycles are different, and there's so many factors that go into it. So I don't know that there is a rule of thumb, but I think, and the founders will know that when they see that their system is not scaling as fast as the market can, allow you to scale, this is when you see those founders invest in go-to-market teams and leadership and processes and systems. By the way, like CRM also. You don't need to have very fancy CRM for founder-led sales. Your email is your CRM and your text messages.
Any tips on sourcing good sales talent in construction tech?
Oh, this is a big topic for us right now because we've grown our team this year, but also like throughout my career, hiring good people in sales is always the biggest challenge, biggest risk, and the biggest opportunity. I personally find, and I'm not saying that I am right or this is the absolute truth, but I personally find that in the sales that I am involved in or have been involved in, where workflow understanding and communication around workflow is important, it's really difficult to train somebody on construction. In my personal opinion and experience, it's easier to take somebody who knows construction really well and train them to be really good in sales. Okay. Obviously, people have to have some basics of, like they need to be able to be a good storyteller again, like they need to be able to hear no all the time. So there are some basics, but I think right now the construction tech world in general is over what I would call this low hanging fruit stage where you can just like, you don't need to invest this much and like this industry is conservative and any solution will fly. No, I think we're beyond that. I think contrary, I think this is a really conservative industry where missteps cost actual money to people on projects. People lose their bonus. It's no longer just, somebody will write it off on the corporate. Like, no, like it will be written off your project and you will get less bonus. And like, that's not like, there's a lot of like risks involved. And unfortunately, I think the industry had its own share of folks who were not great and who overpromised and underdelivered. And yeah, it hurt. So now people are very big, our customers are very particular in who they work with. We find that they want to have somebody who is an expert, who can give them a technical advice, and somebody who will understand the risks that they are involved in. Like from a perspective of like showing up on site with PPE and so on and so forth. So like these things all the way to the basics of being on time, submitting information on time. Yesterday we had a phone call. Somebody's like, "Hey, I need to add you to our bid and it's due on Thursday." So like there is no time for us to go through the proper discovery and this and that and the other. Yes, this is not what a typical kind of sales process is. And I said, "Okay, you need this. I understand it. This is the quote. This is what you need to put in the budget. But let's make sure that next week we're talking about the value that we're bringing." So need to be flexible. So my personal opinion is start looking for people who are in the construction industry, who want to do more than what they're doing right now. I'm just going to use the term that I'm using with recruiters. Somebody who likes to be on site, but does not like porta potties. Somebody who wants to be still able to go to a bathroom other than the porta potties, but loves being on site. So that's kind of where we've been looking at, and there are agencies that can find people for you like that.
That's a great quote. Definitely gonna remember it. What's the foundation of high performing sales team? And I meant in terms of like documentation, KPIs, scripts, and like what's the foundation work?
A kind of hygiene is what you're asking, right? In the last 6 months, I say things changed a lot. Like the volume of Claude interactions we're having as a team has grown exponentially. We're embracing it. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with costs associated with that. But just like with any AI, even our product has AI component. Any AI, you need to have good data. So you need to have all of the data. That's another thing that we have talked about at Hilti. Like there's this idea of a mirror. You can tell the stories, but then there is a mirror. And you're looking at the mirror, you're looking at yourself, and you know all of the good and the bad. You need to dump all of the data, all of the interactions with customers. Sometimes they're great interactions, sometimes they're bad interactions. Sometimes you hear yes, most of the time you hear no. You hear objections that you can't overcome. So there are many things that maybe are not so pleasant, but you need to have a record of that. So the foundation is like you have to record everything. That is tricky because again, we are in a conservative industry. The growth of construction industry today comes from projects that are mostly confidential. So it's not like you can just record every phone call or record every demo or record like you can record most of them, but you got to be careful. You can't just assume that it's okay to do the recordings. You have to ask permission. And sometimes people say, no, don't talk about this project. You can say it. The number of confidential projects we have in the pipeline is just ridiculous. Every other project we have is a confidential project and then a state, confidential project Ohio. And it's because we're signing NDAs and the customers are signing NDAs and we're signing NDAs with like top companies in the world, right? You're not gonna, you see some of these names are like, wow, my signature next to their signature. I understand like the CEO of that company did not actually sign it. Somebody is using their signature on the document, but like still, like it drives the message, right? So once you have the data, I think today making sense of this data is way easier than it was even 2 years ago. Like I remember we're sitting down at AGC last year with one of our account managers and we put together an account plan for a general contractor. It took us 2.5 hours. I'm able to do it in Claude right now in 10, 15 minutes with 80% accuracy. So like, and if you actually put in time, you can probably get this account plan done in half an hour with 95% accuracy. But for that, you need to have, again, like all of the data, where you want to go with this account. And since then, once you have that, actually making sense of it, it's not that difficult. I think the most difficult part is data collection. And by the way, that goes with for construction industry as well.
I think we need another interview for deep dive on using AI for signals based outreach and like how to prepare a foundation. Uh, as we move towards the end, can you share how a week in your life at Versatile looks like?
So actually, I knew you were going to ask this question. So I looked at Google has a fantastic opportunity. You can look at how much time you spend. So I look at the week that I wasn't traveling. So 32% of the time was spent with my team. That means either like one-on-ones or deep dive into some of the topics that they have to, like today I spent about an hour reviewing a presentation. One of our account managers is going to in-person half a day meeting with a customer and he's like, this is what we're going to show, like just sanity checking. What do you think they will ask? What do they think they care about? What questions? And so like those things, like, so a third of my time goes in there. 30% is customers. I still, again, for the sake of being humbled and real, I need to be talking to customers and I need to be hearing no, understand why they're saying no, because I know my guys are hearing the same no. I don't want to hear why people tell them no from them. I want to hear it myself because then I can really understand where is this objection coming from and so on and so forth. And, I don't know of many products that just sell themselves. Like in construction, no is often the answer, right? So I spend about a third of my time with customers. 13% of the time I spend on deep work. So deep work means like I still need to participate, not participate, contribute to thought leadership or documentation, long-term strategy, like putting documents that are used by other folks, where I am basically kind of putting on paper the go-to-market point of view on a particular topic. It could be next generation of hardware, product roadmap, IP topics, and so on and so forth, right? Or just a general understanding of where 11% is operational. That would be like review and MSAs, work orders, expense reporting for our team and budget and so on and so forth. 7% is executive and board members. So just alignment meetings, board meetings, preparation for board meetings, and just one-on-ones with my peers. And then the rest is just internal and small tasks. I'm trying to stay 60% ish in my domain, meaning like either talking to customers or talking to my team about customers.
Like this is very detailed and gives a deep insight. For
Mhm.
people listening, if they want to test Versatile, what is the right time to consider the product and how does the onboarding process look like?
So it depends. If you're okay, so first of all, Versatile, we automate production tracking and productivity tracking for structural trades. So if you're a structural subcontractor, precast, cast in place, curtain wall, steel, the right time is when you are on a critical path with a crane. We need a crane. You need to be on your critical path, and we need to be you need to have a need for daily reporting, which typically people do. We're great at specified materials. We're okay with bulk materials, but like our product is really built for specified materials. So if you have like if you're steel erector or fabricator where you have a design idea and a piece mark and you need to come up with daily reporting by piece mark on when your piece mark arrived on site and when it was erected, bolted, and, detailed and turned over. Like we automate all of this, and the time to do it is typically we are 3 weeks before mobilization throughout the project, and then once the project is over, we're off the hook and on to the next project. So that's kind of what it is. We make it super easy. That's another thing. Like when you talk construction folks, construction professionals, the mobilization and demob are really like mobilization is where you're trying to start as quickly as possible because you want the project to finance itself. So you need to start putting work in place as quickly as possible. So there are many things happening. We're never the most important on the project. Labor is typically the most important and material is the second most important. So we know our place. So we're trying to be as non-intrusive as possible and as helpful as possible, right? So like we want to go on the hook in matter of minutes and start collecting the data immediately. And the time to value for us is next morning you start to see your first report again. Like that's the frequency driver. And then the same with demobilization, because typically that project team is already going on to the next project. So like that transition needs to be immediate, off it goes on to the next project. So we make it also very easy. We coordinate all of the logistics, we coordinate all of the project setup and everything else. So it's pretty seamless for us. We invest
Right.
in people who understand construction. So like most of the folks who are going to be working on your project, setting it up or demobilizing, either have been superintendents probably at GC or a sub.
How can we support you in your mission?
Get the word out. I think the best thing is get the word out about the technology. I think as an industry, we hear a lot. I think it's good to have, just get the word out. People will figure out real from not real.
You're gonna wrap up with a rapid fire. I
Sure.
have like less than 5 seconds to answering. Gotta keep it super brief.
Okay.
Your favorite restaurant?
Boy, North Italia. That's fine.
A city or country which is in your travel bucket list?
Milan, Italy.
Your favorite movie?
My cousin Vinny.
Any book which made a big impact in your life?
Radical candor.
3 words your best friend would describe you as.
Funny, thoughtful, parent.
Your role model?
Oof. I have so many, but you wouldn't know them. But probably Josef Zeidler or Vlado Mosny.
Piece of advice to your 18-year-old self.
Believe in yourself and take the risks.
Nico, anything which we didn't cover in this interview and you would like to share that on a closing note?
Yeah, sure. I had a chance to work with fantastic people, either as my peers or team members or my team leaders. I think we don't talk enough about the value of good team leaders, good peers, good team members, and how we learn from one another. So I think if anybody wants to have that discussion, I would love to hear that. It goes both for the construction industry as well as the contact, because I think having peers is really peers who are adding value or peers who you can learn from or team leaders or team members. That's essential.
Amazing. It was great hosting you, Nico.
Thank you very much.